Welcome to Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news, trends, and hottest topics that focus on advances in cybersecurity and cyber industry economics. Our expert yet down-to-earth hosts make cybersecurity straightforward. They ask the tough questions and make this challenging topic something that everyone can understand. Our candid approach lets guests open up on topics we would all like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at newcyberfrontier.com. That's www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join today's host as he introduces the topic for today's new Cyber Frontier.
Welcome to today's episode of New Cyber Frontier. On today, we are going a little bit of different direction, which I think is very much needed and much overdue. But on we have Kavya Pearlmen, and she is a safety first is her tagline, but she's a cyber guardian and the founder and CEO of XR Safety Initiatives. And we're going to look at the safety aspects around our exploding world of IoT, our exploding world of devices, and what that means to our lives in the future. Kavya, welcome. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Chris. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And so we want to hear from you. Give us the background of, I gave the basis. What do these things mean? What are you doing? How did you get to this point in your life? Give us your background.
Absolutely. So as you sort of mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of XR Safety Initiative. And XR Safety Initiative, XRSI, our mission is to help build safe and inclusive immersive technologies. When I say immersive technologies, it's essentially referring to XR. Our focus is XR, but of course, other technologies also kind of, cross-section with XR. So trying to build that, and how I got into it is kind of interesting. First, I have to start with my story of how I got into cybersecurity, because that's, I love XR, but cybersecurity is still my first love, and I'm really passionate about it.
XR is extended reality.
That's correct. So yeah, and since you mention it, I should go into that, what is essentially XR. Yeah. So in past couple of years, there has been a lot of debate about this sort of taxonomy surrounding XR. Some people even refer to it as like a war of words, and people debate about it on Twitter. It's like, this should be called XR, or, it should be mixed reality as XR. So what we did is we took the time initially to standardize these terms, and we released a standard. So essentially, extended reality is a technology that combines virtual and real environments to power the interactions between machine and humans. Some of us have seen, so it includes virtual reality, which is essentially immersion into a fully digitally artificial environment that's digitally created. And then it includes augmented reality, which most of us are familiar with because we use these, Snapchat filter or Instagram filter that is like overlaying the digital objects on top of the real world environment. And then there is the mixed reality, which is, you can sort of manipulate the real world environment using virtual reality. So it's a mixture of both, such as if you wanted to operate a forklift, you put on a VR headset, but the forklift is somewhere else, and it's a real world entity that's like being, manipulated in that sort of mixed environment. So that's essentially XR. It's like an umbrella term that we use to refer to these collective technologies where we are extending reality into a new realm. And that's the XR piece. So let me get back to the story that I was talking about, how I got into cybersecurity being my first love. So in 2007, Chris, I moved to the United States and I decided to become a hairstylist. And I was actually a hairstylist for about 4 or 5 years. I was cutting hair for about $10 an hour or so and was living a simple life until one day, someone like yourself, a gentleman who did cybersecurity, was one of my customers, and we had a chit chat while I was cutting his hair. He recommended a book called Cyber War by Richard Clarke. And then I read that book and I was like, that's it. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. I went straight to DePaul University to do my master's in network security. And thereafter, I got a job at a security operations center. Then this was back in Chicago. And then I was like, okay, 8 years in Chicago did it for me. We're talking about 2015 by then. And then I basically moved to California, worked for a year for a corporate immigration law firm. But then immediately after, I was recruited by Facebook during 2016 election time. I was doing third-party security for Facebook, advising them on third-party security risks. And then about a year later, I became the head of security for a oldest existing virtual world, Second Life. The company is called Linden Lab, and they were coming up with this new platform, which was VR-based called Sansar. So that was my, like coming into XR, moving from cybersecurity to going to XR. And then I was starting to explore this cross-section and recognize tremendous risk that is coming to these domains. And you really kind of have to have some native knowledge of virtual worlds and how these emerging technologies are evolving, because it's an uncharted territory. So based on my previous experiences with Facebook, with being a head of security for Linden Lab, and in general my own research work that I do independently, it just placed me in a unique position to be able to advise to the industry to try to mitigate these gaps that exist, the awareness, the understanding, and then there is that, no standardization, no guidelines, and then no regulation. All of that brought together a mix of challenges that exist in the domain. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to solve these. And that's how XR Safety Initiative came into existence in 2019. And we've gotten a lot of traction since then. We've developed a few standards and, just continuing our mission.
All right.
To help build safe, immersive environments.
Let's take a break here from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Cyber Resilience Institute helps build strong cyber communities designed to prevent members from attack. Like building a neighborhood watch, it takes coordination and a sharing community to protect our identities and valuables in the virtual world. Typically, we hear that organizations know they need to do something to protect their cyber assets, but don't know where to begin. Let Cyber Resilience Institute help your community create an action plan. Cyber Resilience Institute will build your community or business marketplace so that it is designed to support a collective cyber defense. Contact them for more information at cyberresilienceinstitute.org.
Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today, talking to Kavya Pearlmen about XR, and she gave a good definition of what that was, extended reality. And you know what? I'm sitting here entranced because this is new to me in many areas. It's nothing that I haven't heard before, but put together as a study, as a direction, it is entirely fascinating. And I was so interested to hear you talk about that in your organization. So give us some more about now what your organization's direction is, what the mission is. It's a nonprofit, and you're looking to make a social impact change as much as a technology change. What is it all about? Give us what you're doing here.
Totally. And like I said earlier, we help build safe and inclusive experiences, XR or, extended reality, immersive environments. So XRSI is a 501c3 worldwide nonprofit. We're registered in California. We take charitable donations and money, and it's essentially focusing on privacy, security, ethics, inclusion, accessibility. Now, what is the goal here is to really inform our stakeholders, and I'll talk about the stakeholders in a minute, to help them make informed and pragmatic decisions. Because as we know in the industry, and especially in the sort of uncharted territories, there are organizations that, and I'm not gonna name them, but I'm sure you could guess, they like to move fast and often break things. So those type of big tech firms, as well as, just independent developers and even regulators, we have to develop this understanding of, one, what could go wrong, so we can be proactive about mitigating those risks, and potential solutions, like how do we mitigate these risks? So those are the, these are the things that we explore. And when you talk about stakeholders for XRSI, individuals, because we need to create awareness around it. Even if like sometimes I meet like really amazing experts, but they had either not heard of this XR and safety and cybersecurity cross section, or they're just not sure how to get started. So individual wise, we need to create more awareness that this is an emerging issue as the technology gains more traction. Corporations generally prioritize product development and moving fast or scaling. So we need to sort of we need to press on the idea of incorporating safety by design, privacy by design. And then universities are stakeholders because we want to educate them what should be included in the curriculum, and safety, inclusion, ethics, all of this has to be taken into account. And then finally, government agencies, because we have often seen that the understanding of technology is lacking when we talk about, let's say, general data protection regulation or CCPA and stuff. So ultimately, we need to make sure that our regulators understand the tech when they are making these type of policies. So we help them propose, at least in the long term, we would definitely lead the narrative on what should be the policies here. And in the meantime, at least we educate big tech firms to do that, indie devs to do that. So internal policies and how should they be developed.
Interesting. So, when I hear you talk about this in the last part, it really kind of resonates with things that are a couple years ago. The professional engineering certifications, the IEEE Creed, where it was about safety and design to protect the end consumer. But so much of that has been lost. It's almost like a reviving of things like that are almost just forgotten about. Nobody really pursues that anymore in their designs.
Right. And, that's something that, because it is a completely new territory and completely new way to sort of interact with humans and machines, we do have to think of design consideration to the point that this has a psychological impact on humans. Once you're exposed to something and you've stepped into something, we're talking about just very simple things. Even, if you create, let's say, a table or something 3D in immersive environment, it could be scary if you design a certain way, or it could be welcoming. So what kind of a design decisions are made? Are you making people safer or not? And then, building out tools. So whenever people congregate in a digital environment, we have seen it via Twitter, we've seen it via other social media. So there is a term in XR is social XR, or social VR, generally we call it, because virtual reality has a huge element of coming together and exchanging experiences. People could bully each other, harass each other. And so if you're an avatar in an immersive environment and you're being harassed, which this is like literally my experience, and it did happen to me when I was in VR and head of security at times. Like, this was the first time I noticed that it had a tremendous impact on my psyche. And somebody used F this, F that. And 3 days, I just didn't even want to step into that platform because I was too triggered. So that's why I feel like there is this safety aspect that has to be baked in to these designs. Mm-hmm. And since these are new territories, we have to really just do a lot of awareness and education to make sure that this happens.
It's interesting that the example you just used with kind of bullying. How would you think that, it almost sounds like a censorship thing there, putting something in place that would almost be like a censorship platform would be the resolution to that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and now we are, sort of talking about a little bit of a privacy aspects to solve these things. So the way we are thinking about it, we have to lean on capturing the data, analyzing the data in order to get ahead of these things. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, we have to use artificial intelligence and computer vision potentially to identify people accurately. So to build sort of like, credible system that knows that these are the good players. And if there is somebody who is violating the rules of code of conduct, then we should be able to identify it. But it's really hard to do when the communication is real time and there is too many players, almost billions, sometimes millions, we're talking at some point. So then we have to the way we are addressing it is we're keeping an eye on these technology and supporting the ethical ones, the ethical organizations, such as one we have, Gamer Safer. This organization uses artificial intelligence and computer vision to promote positive behavior in gaming. They also do parental awareness. So immediately we're like, okay, this is a great organization. They're doing this. We just really want to stay close because the potential of abuse in that sense, because, can you imagine if that kind of information gets in the hands of groomers, pedophiles, and whatever? We can't have that happen. So we want to provide them guidance on how to incorporate privacy while you're building this type of technology. Because let's face it, we can't combat these things without using these emerging technologies. We have to collect the data. And so we have to be ethical about those collection. We have to minimize the collection and use it so that it doesn't fall in the wrong hands. Yeah. So I would say we have to utilize the same exact, innovation stuff that's happening in the industry.
Yeah. We'll be right back. We're going to hear from our sponsors. Welcome back to New Cyber Frontier. On today with Kavya Pearlmen, talking about safety and changing the topic from cybersecurity to safety. Safety in our products, safety in our platforms, safety in our operations, safety in our IoT devices. So while we were on break, I thought about this a little bit, and something came to mind I wanted to just ping at you, and it's the IoT safety. Okay, so there's this device that does, this was something I heard talked about it at the RSA conference, I think 2 years ago. A presenter talked about this, and I went and researched it and found, absolutely this was happening. That there was an injection pump for the insulin injection pump that people were putting on their body, right? And the one that was approved by the FDA for use was not very accurate. So people are actually taking a Raspberry Pi, hacking it, writing the code, or using somebody's code they download off the internet to run this insulin injection and putting it on their kids.
Wow.
And this is happening. You could go find this online. And there's absolutely no standard for one, or the standard that the government puts out is so restrictive that people are finding a workaround that is incredibly dangerous.
Totally.
And they're strapping this on their kids and themselves, and that, where do we go to start? I mean, you can't stop people from doing this if they can download the code, put it on their Raspberry Pi, connect up the circuits, and it runs. But where's the world go in this direction?
Right. So that is a very legit concern, Chris. And we obviously, in the cybersecurity industry, we are noticing just the cybersecurity aspects, but then there are others as well. So, of course, people are going to want to go to FDA to make their, build more credibility. But even with FDA also doesn't have enough guidance in that sense. So we identified this gap at XRSI. And then I started to bring together experts to specifically address this. And as a result, what we came up with is a program called Medical XR Council. And Medical XR Council is just, group of people that are researchers, scientists, and just, medical professionals. And we bring them together to explore this gap, to create this, develop some kind of a trustworthy content. And we bring doctors and healthcare professionals. So essentially the purpose is exactly this, is to foster and improve the safety of this medical XR ecosystem. And you say IoT, it's very much, it's exactly the same. These XR devices are essentially IoT devices with sensors, with all this data moving in and out. So we have to think about the cybersecurity and privacy threats of these things. We have to, again, leverage XR to create more better healthcare solution like telehealth, or now we have this whole COVID-19 pandemic happening. We have to think about the medical health of the masses and how to scale these solutions, how to educate our folks that are actually using these devices, but keeping it secure and safe in that sense. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to bring all these researchers and experts together, discuss these innovation opportunities, increase the awareness around safety, create these, standard around or baseline standard around cybersecurity and privacy, and help understand and anticipate these risks and potentially propose solutions so that people who are building these technologies, they could incorporate and mitigate these risks proactively. Very tall order, I have to say, but
Yeah.
I think somebody has to do it, and I think we're taking the lead in this and really trying something here.
Yeah. So what all kinds of organizations are you bringing together in this?
At the moment, at the moment, we're going with organizations like NHS. We have been reached out by FDA to help them with their own innovative initiative, innovation initiative. So FDA, WHO, CDC, like these are the organizations. Of course, hospitals, big medical organizations. We are also exploring some of the healthcare advisory. So how we have like CCERT and US CERT, those kinds of advisories. There are advisories that put out notification when there is a vulnerability discovered. I believe is the I actually don't want to announce the name because we're still like in conversation, but they're like advisory organizations that we are exploring. There is XR related organizations that are also exploring medical cross section. So, rather than spinning new apparatus, we just want to partner with them because they're already doing awareness. So why not just build with them? So there are a few really interesting announcement coming up in August that I would say, XRSI is something that if you're interested in this cross section, definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah. So, so often in cybersecurity, things are only driven by what has to be done, what's mandated by government regulations. I hear that you're so far ahead of your time here, the current technological capability. How do you perceive that this adoption takes hold? What's the driver?
We have been waiting actually in immersive domain or in XR. We had been waiting for a catalyzing event. And if you want to take a guess on that catalyzing event, I'm sure you could probably accurately guess, yes, it's COVID-19. COVID-19 has created this emergency of wanting to be together, but still stay apart. And yes, it is COVID-19, but it's not the only incident that we would encounter where we want to be together, but we have to stay apart. We have climate change and all these other things coming up. So we know that these technologies are going to inevitably be adopted. So what's driving? These are the things. Apple is going to release their AR glasses. Facebook is working on their AR glasses. They capture a huge market share for virtual reality using Oculus, as their hardware and software platform. So these are things that are really driving adoption. And as that takes place, we do have to think about what that means for humanity. When we do extend realities, and now instead of like congregating on Twitter, Facebook, and not just that, but like if we start to do education, because there's so many domains that open up, right? There is tourism that is, a huge part that now you no longer have to travel. There is real estate, so you can actually experience entire apartment in VR and AR without having to ever go there. Even the lighting, the fixture. Automobiles are using augmented and virtual reality to proactively see, like without even manufacturing anything, you can have the entire design. You can bring your customer and be like, hey, you like this car? Or what do you think about this? You can, before manufacturing parts, you can actually see it in VR as if it's real. So there's just too many domains that are crossing at the intersection of XR, and that could be impacted. Gaming is a huge one, and education. So we have to think about these consequences that will occur. An example that I would take is Facebook Live, for example. We launched this platform, and I was actually over at Facebook back when this happened. And then we didn't anticipate the idea that somebody would put a kerosene on their body and burn themselves alive. So what happens when these type of things happen? But because some of these problems have already occurred in social platforms, or we know that data can be used to weaponize, target specific users to interfere with elections and whatnot, and ton of data is coming through these devices. So we just need to stay aware, and we need to create some of these baseline standards and then just adopt it from a compliance, regulation, whatever causes this, whatever makes sure that we can actually stick this to people that are actually making these, technologies, people that are consuming these technologies.
So what do you see as a timeline? What does this look like in 5 years, 10 years?
Oh gosh, I dread this question so much, Chris, because okay, let me ask you something. What were your plans for 2020 in January? So I'm going to ask from that perspective, because,
Lots of meetings.
I could, what's that? Go ahead.
Lots of
I really
in-person
wanna...
meetings and travel that didn't happen.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, we anticipated so much about 2020 and none of that kind of really happened. So I feel like it would be unfair for me to call myself an expert and make those predictions at the moment. And I believe that people who do make those predictions, I don't think that we have enough amount of data to really make those predictions, because there's just too many moving factors. Even if you look at these marketing analysis sometimes, that projected growth by 2020 is this much, by 2022, they are adjusting their scales because COVID happened. They're adjusting their data sets because there are other factors that are contributing now. We have this catalyzing event that has accelerated the adoption. So the projections are now much higher than what we anticipated earlier. So it's a very tough question to answer. How would it be in 5 years? The one thing, though, I could say is mass adoption is inevitable, because we're talking about some massive players, people like corporations like Apple. Apple changed the way we communicate, we connect, and we do commerce. And that's exactly what's going to happen. We're talking about this huge shift of like Web 3.0 coming into existence. And so we are inevitably going to leave these square glass handheld devices and start to adapt more of like, smart glass type of technologies where you have 3D tracking, geolocation tracking, and just like smart assistance in all possible ways. And of course, that brings up so many concerns about privacy, so many concerns about other things. So I feel like our problems are not going away. They're getting magnified. They're getting bigger, and we need to we're practically playing catch up in cybersecurity as it is. But then there's this other whole new gamut of problems that are coming from XR and IoT intersections and these emerging technologies. So things are probably not getting better, but I hope there are more and more passionate individuals just like yourself that are exploring these cross sections and creating awareness, and hopefully we'll stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, staying ahead of the game, and I would say the current trend in staying ahead of the game and where the biggest companies make money is exploiting privacy and not spending the extra time to be secure in their designs, because that would change their time to market. So it's almost like when we talk about these things, this is the conversation I've been having for years, we're going against the biggest companies' profit centers. How do you speak to that part?
Right. So I feel there's three things that need to happen. We need to have some sort of accountability. How do you create accountability is by doing research, more research. So let me give you one example. And this is, I can certainly call Facebook by name on this because, hey, Cambridge Analytica happened, right? And we know that about 87 million users' data in the United States was kind of unauthorized, like accessed by these other firms that were not authorized to do so. And then we learned that about 5,000 data points on each of the US citizens, like a unique data points were collected. And then those 5,000 data points were used to manipulate people's behavior and, have them vote one way or the other, whatever. Like all this happened. But now when it comes to virtual reality, the research coming out of Stanford University tells us that 20 minutes of virtual reality game recorded about 2 million unique data points on about human body movement. Now, compare that. 5,000 unique data points, 2 million unique data points only in 20 minutes. So imagine what all kind of information is going to be collected and then potentially weaponized. So coming back to your question, and let me also add what data that is. It's eye gaze data, gesture, facial expression, so much that I could potentially create an entire digital replica of you and potentially upload to kind of a simulated environment. And that has happened as a proof of concept. We have seen people reviving their kid. This happened in Korea, actually. This was a viral video that we saw, and the mother was like totally shattered, but I think it was a good therapeutic experience for her, where they recreated her dead child. And these things are happening, and they are going to happen. So this enormous amount of data collection that blurs the line of accountability, privacy, and data protection, we have to think about that. How do we do this? Create awareness, create accountability, do more research, and then build the bridges with these big tech firms to really help them understand that, you can't no longer move fast and break things, because if you do that for XR, you're really going to break humans. Like, people could really go crazy not knowing what's real, what's virtual. Mm-hmm. And it's a really like a big challenge creating that accountability. Then putting all these guidelines into a regulatory form, so you can't just get away with it. And I know that organization will still find a way to run risks. We only saw $5 billion fine coming from FTC for Facebook, so things like that will happen still. But we can't just like throw our hands in the air and say, oh, this is too difficult, we can't do it. We do have to just do our best. We may not be able to boil the ocean, but we'll have to start somewhere and do some mitigation wherever that's possible.
Interesting. So this has been a great talk. I love it. We're going to have to wrap up here. But in closing, what help do you need? Who do you need to reach out to? How can they get a hold of you? And what things can they become involved with on this effort?
So we need a lot of help. Because this is a new domain. First of all, we would need curious individuals who are researchers thinking about this domain and exploring this. So we have a particular program called CyberXR Coalition. In about a few weeks from now, we're rolling out a membership-based model so people can actually become members and start exploring this domain. Whether they want to get into XR, whether they are into XR, they can help build standards, they can help curate these things. But so eventually we're going to create a membership-based model. But today, right now, if you are interested in supporting the mission, you can go on to www.xrsi.org and provide donations to XRSI, because we're a charitable organization. We're all volunteer run. We need tremendous amount of help. We also have awareness initiative where we are bringing in experts to talk about the cross sections of XR, IoT, brain-computer interface, 5G, all of that. And the way we are doing it is by using a platform we're building this platform called Ready Hacker One. It's a play on words from Ready Player One. Goal is building awareness. So if you are that expert, or if you are looking for truth in XR, then you definitely want to look to these few initiatives that are happening. If you're a hospital and you're looking for guidance on some of the medical devices that are XR devices, then talk about Medical XR Council. So there are a few programs, and those are outlined on our website. More and more development will happen. We need more people, we need funding, we need research money, we need any support that can be, helpful in potentially guiding the narrative and building more accountability in this domain.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. It's definitely been a pleasure, and I look forward to becoming more involved with this myself. So we will hopefully be talking in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to New Cyber Frontier. Remember to follow or like our post and circulate each new show to your networks. We keep you informed, bring you the latest news, explore new trends, and find the hottest topics. With New Cyber Frontier, you don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert. Just get plugged in. We encourage you to get involved. Tell us what topics interest you and join our mailing lists. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. That's newcyberfrontier.com. Check out our previous interviews and please let us know if there are any topics that you would like to hear discussed. See you next time on New Cyber Frontier.